Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing a story that you might have actually lived through yourself, and trust me, it's a love story. Are you ready? Let's go! She was 60 years old, alone on a Texas ranch, and completely convinced that the part of her that could feel love had quietly died years ago then. A 26-year-old, stable hand walked through her gate one morning, and without saying a single word, woke up everything inside her she had buried. Okay, girls, pull up a chair because I have to tell you about something I came across recently, and I have not been able to stop thinking about it since. You know how sometimes you hear a story, and it just sits with you. It stays in the back of your mind while you are making coffee, while you are driving, while you are lying in bed staring at the ceiling. This is one of those stories. So get comfortable, because this one is something else. Her name was Dorothy. She was 60 years old, living alone on a sprawling horse ranch just outside of Austin, Texas. She had inherited the land from her late husband, a good man named Robert, who passed away from heart failure about 4 years before any of this happened. Dorothy had loved Robert deeply, but if she was being honest with herself, and she was not always willing to do that, the love between them had grown quiet over the years. Comfortable, steady, but not the kind of love that makes your hands shake. Not the kind that keeps the lights on inside you. When Robert died, Dorothy told herself that chapter of her life was simply over. She was 56 years old, she had a ranch to run, horses to care for, and a life that made sense without anyone in it. She poured herself into the land. She woke up before the sun every single morning. She learned things Robert used to handle on his own. She became capable and strong and self-sufficient, and somewhere along the way she quietly stopped expecting anything more from life than what she already had. Now I want you to really picture this woman, girls. She is not sad exactly. She is not broken. She is just someone who has folded up the part of herself that used to dream and tucked it somewhere deep down where it cannot cause any trouble. She has her horses. She has her land. She has a routine that fills her days so completely that she almost never has to sit still long enough to feel the silence. Almost. It was a Tuesday morning in late October when everything changed. Dorothy had been looking for extra help around the ranch for weeks because one of her longtime workers had moved away and she was feeling the gap. A friend of a friend mentioned a young man named Jake who had grown up around horses and was looking for steady work. Dorothy did not think much about it. She needed someone reliable and strong. End of story. When Jake showed up that morning, Dorothy was already out by the fence checking on one of the older mares. She heard boots on gravel and turned around, and there he was. 26 years old, tall, lean, with dark hair that curled slightly at the ends, and these quiet brown eyes that looked at everything around him like he was reading a language most people could not understand. He did not say much during the interview, just answered her questions directly, looked her in the eye, and then got up and walked straight to the horse that had been most skittish all morning and stood beside her without a word until that animal visibly relaxed. Dorothy hired him on the spot. Girls, she told herself it was just a practical decision, and for the first few weeks it genuinely was. Jake was exceptional at his job. He had this calm about him that the horses responded to immediately. He worked hard without being asked twice. He showed up early and stayed late. Dorothy would catch herself watching him from the kitchen window sometimes, not for any reason she wanted to examine too closely, just because there was something about the way he moved through that land that was so steady, and sure that it was almost peaceful to watch. But here is where the story gets interesting. About 3 weeks in, Dorothy came out late one evening to check on one of the horses that had been running a slight fever. The stable was dim and quiet, and she did not expect anyone to be there. But Jake was there, sitting on an overturned bucket in the corner, reading a worn paperback by the light of his phone, keeping company with the sick horse without anyone having asked him to. Dorothy stood in that doorway for a long moment before he noticed her. When he looked up, he just said, "Figured she might not want to be alone tonight," and Dorothy felt something move in her chest that she had not felt in a very long time. They started talking after that, not in any dramatic way, nothing rushed or performed. It happened the way real things happen, slowly and then all at once, during lunch breaks. During the long, quiet hours of evening when the work was done and the sun was going down over the hills, and the whole world turned that particular shade of gold that makes you feel like time has stopped being cruel. Jake talked about growing up in a small town in Wyoming, about his father who taught him everything about horses and very little about anything else, about how he had spent most of his adult life feeling like he did not quite belong anywhere. Dorothy listened to every word. She understood more of it than she expected to. One evening, Dorothy asked him straight out why he had never seemed to have anyone in his life. No calls coming in, no mentions of friends or a girlfriend, nothing. Jake was quiet for a long time before he answered. He told her that he had tried. He told her that he was not always good at letting people close because he had learned very young that letting people close meant eventually watching them leave. He said it simply, without drama. The way you say something you have made your peace with, even if the peace is not perfect. Dorothy put her hand over his on the fence post between them. She did not plan to do it. Her hand just moved, and Jake looked down at her hand and then up at her face, and something passed between them that neither of them tried to name right away, because naming it would have made it real, and making it real would have required a kind of courage that both of them were still gathering. It took another month, a rainy evening, the two of them sitting on the porch, watching the storm roll in across the flat land, Dorothy with her coffee and Jake with his boots up on the railing. He told her that he had never in his life looked forward to somewhere the way he looked forward to coming to that ranch every morning. Dorothy told him that she had stopped believing the ranch was enough a few weeks ago, and she had been trying to figure out what to do about that. They looked at each other in the dim porch light, with the rain coming down around them, and that was that. Girls, I have been sitting with this story for days now, and I keep coming back to one thing. Dorothy spent 4 years telling herself that she was finished, that the loving part of her life had run its course, and the decent thing to do was accept that gracefully and move on. And I understand that. I think a lot of us understand that. There comes a point where being hopeful starts to feel almost embarrassing, like you are asking for something you no longer have the right to ask for. But Dorothy did not go looking for Jake. She was not trying to feel anything. She was just living her life as honestly and fully as she knew how, and because she did that, because she stayed open without even realizing she was staying open, something found her. Not something perfect, not something simple, something real, and real is always worth more than perfect. Remember that. Okay? Remember that. If this story touched something in you, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment down below and tell me what you think, because honestly, some of your comments on these stories are the best part of my week, and I mean that completely. If you know someone who needs to hear a story like this right now, share this video with them. You never know whose day you might change with something that simple. And if you are new here, and this is the first story of mine you have ever heard, welcome. There are so many more where this came from. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you never miss one, because I promise you, every single story I bring you is one worth staying for. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight, girls. Same time next week.